Strohmeyer,
Mike Gardner.
Jamie Percy.
William Cottrell.
Can everyone rise for the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. On the agenda, we need to add animal control job description and posting for that position. Public comment, approval of minutes, warrants, correspondence, excess weight permits, tobacco first, second, and third class license application approvals. Kim Caldwell from the DEC with the update regarding the Center Street parcel 053-18. Excuse me. Our town attorney, Bob Fisher, discussion regarding the church, carriage barn in the old town hall. Planning commission resignation and new member appointment, draft invite to bid for contract law enforcement services, discussion and approval. Employee self-evaluation discussion and approval. USPAP appraisal services for ROW purchase and procurement procedure discussion. Public comment and adjourn.
So moved with the change?
Second.
Where are we gonna add that? Let's add that after, Bob Fisher.
Okay.
12A. That way we can.
Don't keep them hanging.
Right. All right, we're gonna add that after, 12, would be 12A. I have an approval with the addition. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comment, Hannah?
Somebody's coming.
Okay, whenever, Hannah. Jim, you can go ahead, sorry.
Is he muted?
He is muted.
But not on your end, on his end.
I don't. I asked him to unmute for my side.
Can he type if he needs to type?
Jim, can you unmute yourself? That's what it's stating on our side.
Maybe he stepped away. Or
I guess step away to miss the opportune time.
if it's not working, Jim, you could try the chat also.
Oh, I was looking unmuted now. I'm wondering if it's a error with his connection, because he did unmute now.
Jim, can you hear us?
We can't hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now we
Now we
can.
can.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Jim Kosas, North Mason Hill Road. Hey, I was just curious. I was looking over some of the past minutes that I could find, and I saw in the April 11th select board meeting, a letter that came from Darcy and also mentioned about the decertification of something at the mobile home. I was just curious, is that a select board motion that should have been made, or because it has nothing to do with the general road, should that have really been under the sewer commissions to approve? Thank you.
On the decommission?
Yeah.
I asked Darcy if which way she wanted to do it, and she said it's always been done in select board meetings.
But we act as a sewer commission too, so.
That's fine. I was just curious.
Jim, would you, because I don't wanna,
Something that's more about a found in a window in Green Island. We say was found at a home on Lafayette Street. Please tell us, something happened.
Anakin,
Yeah,
What is that?
it was. Yeah, it was another Jim.
He said thank you.
Oh, okay.
Jim, we can answer that. If you send that question in, we'll answer that question in an email back. I don't wanna get away from what we tried to do here and not get into a question and answer, but there's a definite answer for that on why we did it that night. We can send that right back to you tomorrow. Please and thank you. Any more public comment, Hannah? Okay, approval of minutes of April 11th, 24. Select board meeting.
Second,
Any corrections on those minutes, additions, questions? I have a motion, I have a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes of April 18th, special select board meeting.
I just have a correction on number 2 line, board roll call. It has Brian Harris and Jamie as not here. I think that might have been an autocorrect because Brian isn't on the board anymore. So could you please fix that?
And I believe I was here.
Yes, you were. Everybody was here that night.
Yep.
Right. Thank you so much.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second it.
Any more discussion or corrections? Saw that two things, Angie.
You're welcome.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Warrants. Accounts payable April 19th, $29,053.86.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Accounts payable April 26th, $45,900.99.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Payroll, April 19th, $11,323.22.
So moved.
Second.
Questions on payroll, corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Payroll, April 26th, $11,193.50.
So moved.
Second. Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any questions on payroll? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, correspondence?
None tonight.
No correspondence tonight. Excess weight permits?
Nope.
No excess weight permits. First tobacco, first, second, and third class license application approvals.
Okay, so like we did before, we'll do these all separate. This one is Dollar General Retail LLC for a second class license.
So moved.
Second it.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
There's another Dollar General Retail LLC for their tobacco license.
So moved.
Second. Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a first class club license for the American Legion Pownal Post number 90.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, we have a third class club license for American Legion Pownal Post 90.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's it.
That's it.
So, presentation from Kim Caldwell, the DEC, on an update regarding the Center Street parcel. And I believe Unicorn Management's in as well. Sarah, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Unicorn Management is the property management company that is, if I'm not mistaken, they're the ones in charge of what's going on there, right, Kim?
Unicorn is the environmental consultant that works on behalf of American Premier Underwriters.
Okay. Good to see you, Kim. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me back. I'm doing well. I have a presentation. It's basically the same that I ran through last year with a little bit of an update. If you'd like me to share my screen, or if I can have the capability of doing that. Or we could, keep it more informal and ask questions about what I've previously presented, but I'm happy to go through everything again with what was provided about the potential for the town to take ownership of this property, if they have any interest in that, and just kind of go through that process again.
We can give her the screen share. Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah.
You should be all set, Kimberly.
Okay, I see it now. All right. All right. Can everyone see that then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So just so everyone knows what property we're talking about, 0 Center Street at the corner of Route 7 and North Pownal Road. Tonight I just wanted to give you an update on the site status and again discuss the potential transfer of ownership to the town of Pownal and what the process would look like if you were interested in doing that. And I would talk specifically about the municipal liability exemption agreement, our umbrella program, which is the brownfields program that offers state liability protection, and just a touch on a phase 1 environmental site assessment and what that would entail as well. And then just to refresh everyone's memory on what's going on here, the site is contaminated with per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as PFAS, the most common of which on this site is PFOA. Warren Wire operated their plant number 3 at this location in the 1950s, and we know they used PFAS as part of the process to coat wire with Teflon. And so EPA first did a study in 2016 to look for contamination here based on the knowledge of those wire coating activities. The state and EPA did some investigation for a while, and then in early 2020, American Premier Underwriters started conducting the work with their consultant, Unicorn Management. And so from that point until today, there's been a lot of work done to characterize the soil and groundwater here and on this property and surrounding properties. I think we're at the point where we have a very thorough understanding of what is going on in soil and groundwater. I've received the latest report just this week from Unicorn and in the process of reviewing that. But this just shows you a snippet of the most recent monitoring that was done last fall. There was quarterly monitoring done for a while after the most recent monitoring wells were installed to see if groundwater had migrated beyond the property boundaries. And so we have that pretty well delineated. And I just wanted to mention that while there is PFAS in soil, the levels in soil are not above what our direct contact risk standards are in our rule. So if someone were to, touch the soil or be present on site, there's not a risk to them directly, but we are concerned with the contamination in the groundwater. And that the groundwater contamination is above our current standards. But this just kind of shows you a little bit that there's a plume kind of just north of the former building foundation on the site, and groundwater is generally moving toward the north and northeast. And this is there's a map here of shallow groundwater and deep groundwater. So we're seeing higher levels in shallow groundwater, but a little bit in deep groundwater as well, kind of more localized. So as I said, I'm in the process of reviewing this most recent report from UMC, but we do anticipate that the next step will be what we call an evaluation of corrective action alternatives. So to look at what the options are to do any cleanup on this site. And so our rule requires that the responsible party look at multiple options, and there's 11 criteria listed here. Everything from the feasibility of the different cleanup options to the cost to if it requires long-term monitoring or other site restrictions. And so there's a few different options that Unicorn has indicated that they are proposing to look at. That includes excavation of the soil hotspot. So actually removing some soil from the site if it's still a source to continuing groundwater contamination. And they'd also be looking at some other options, potentially treating groundwater, removing groundwater and treating it and then putting it back in the ground. PFAS is definitely a complicated contaminant. It's not something that is easily remediated in the way that we can think of like petroleum contamination. So aside from really using carbon like you do for treating your drinking water, there's not really a lot of technologies that can be used to treat PFAS in the ground. And then I would just mention that all of these options, whether there be any limited excavation or treatment, we do expect that there's going to be long-term monitoring of groundwater and potentially some institutional controls to make sure that any reuse of the site is not going to exacerbate the contamination or change the conditions in a way that would cause people to be at risk to what's here. So that's what's coming up next once I go through that report and respond to it. And then we'll, work with Unicorn to look at these options for cleanup, and they'll propose what they think is the best option. And if DEC agrees, they would write a corrective action plan to implement that cleanup or whatever is decided. And there's a public comment process that goes along with that corrective action plan approval. So I can pause there. I was going to move on to the process for the town to take ownership if they're interested in the liability exemption programs, but I can pause if anyone has questions about the status of the site or what's coming up.
So my question would be, how long of a process would this take? And would the town be able to put it back out there in the tax as revenue for economic growth?
In terms of
The
doing any
cleanup.
corrective actions on the site?
Yes, yes.
I don't know at this point. That would be something that would be looked at as part of this evaluation. So they would look at the time frame for all of these options, for both for any active cleanup and then potentially the long-term monitoring. So I can talk a bit more about if there is if the town does take ownership and they enroll in our brownfields program, there are ways to get liability protection even before a site is completely cleaned up. So if there's still long-term monitoring at a site, someone who has a certificate of completion and on a site where all the active remediation is done, there could still be continuing obligations in terms of long-term monitoring that's occurring, but there would be liability protection in place that could transfer to subsequent developers. And that certificate would outline all of, the continuing obligations of the site. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but there's we would expect to know more about timeframes once the ECA, the evaluation of corrective action alternatives, is completed. And if there is a known reuse or potential reuse, that would be something that could be worked into any potential corrective action plan. So we know, what might be coming down the road in terms of any redevelopment on the site. It's typical that any cleanup happens in conjunction with redevelopment, but there's definitely ways where, those can happen in sequence and one after the other.
Okay, and then my other question is the surrounding areas that you tested. Say the property across the street from Center Street,
Mhm.
was that found with PFOAs in it? Was that considered contaminated? Because I was wondering if you worked out a deal with one of the neighboring people to get a well driven with usable water, if something could be done with that property, as long as they had safe water to drink and use.
So a lot of private wells in this area have been tested. The testing hasn't been done in a few years. And at that, when we did do the testing, there was one property that a couple times did exceed our groundwater standards at the time. More recently, it hasn't been exceeding. So sometimes the data is, the data has fluctuated and we haven't really been seeing any exceedances in that property lately, but we haven't tested a lot of the wells more recently.
Because I live on Center Street and my parents live on Center Street and they
Yeah.
all were negative.
Yeah, so we didn't have any detections above or any exceedances to our standards at the time. I guess I would mention the potential for our groundwater standards to change in the future. I don't know what the time frame of that is, but EPA recently released a maximum contaminant level for public drinking water. And we expect that our Vermont standards may change once our health department looks at the information that led to that decision from EPA. And so I don't know
Okay,
really any more than that about, if our standards, what our standards would change to and when, but there's a potential that we could be testing more in the future to ensure that everyone's drinking water is still meeting our standards.
okay.
But I guess, yeah, if we do find additional issues, we would determine if anyone, needs treatment or anything else like that.
I got a question.
Sure.
It's regards to the wetlands. Have
Sure.
those been delineated? Have they been marked out what the wetlands are on that property?
I know there's a wetland delineation on our A&R atlas. I don't know
Have
what,
you done it? Have they done it in regards to this project?
I don't believe there's been an official survey on this property since I've been working on this project.
Okay, just for curiosity's sake, what was the contact threshold on the PFOA? Or you were talking that if you got the, let's say some mud on you, what was the threshold on that?
I don't have that in front of me, but I could follow up with what our soil standards are and what the concentrations are on this site.
Well, I just was curious on, you said that they were below. I just was curious what the reading you had to have that was below, the minimum required.
What's the maximum contaminant level that you were looking for?
Yeah,
I think you're asking what the state standard is.
that's correct.
And what the level of contamination is there. I think that's what he's
Yeah,
asking.
I don't know off the top of my head what the soil standards are, but I can follow up with that information.
Okay.
My review of the report most recently has been focused on the groundwater contaminant levels, so
So if this town were to take over this property, to my knowledge, the owners haven't reached out to us yet.
Yes, they have. They sent a letter.
He reached out to us multiple
Multiple times,
Okay.
yes.
What's the financial burden to the town?
sure, so I can go over what that process would look like in terms of, any environmental liability. The slide I have up now really, there's a unique program that we have. It used to just be open to regional development corporations or regional planning commissions. It's now available to municipalities to take ownership of contaminated properties or brownfields and stay out of the chain of liability completely. So the town would enter into an agreement with the secretaries of the Agency of Natural Resources and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development prior to acquisition. And basically that would just outline if the municipality plans on marketing the property once the cleanup work is done, or if they would have any obligations to do work on the property. We expect that APU and Unicorn would continue to do the work here, so we don't expect the town would need to do any environmental work, but this would be a layer of protection for the town once they own the property. We would also recommend that they enroll in our brownfields program. So if something were to change, like I said, I don't expect the responsible party to stop doing work, but enrollment in our brownfields program would allow the town to have access to funding should anything change. There is a $500 application fee to enroll in that brownfields program, the umbrella program. We would also recommend that the town conducts a phase 1 environmental site assessment prior to purchase, which provides federal defense to federal liability. But there are funds from DEC to help the town do that prior to purchase. So we have funding that we could hire one of our consultants to do a phase 1 environmental site assessment on behalf of the town. And that would look at, basically it looks at the history of the site and all of the environmental issues on the property. And basically is a document that provides a defense to federal liability. And it's what we recommend to anyone buying a potentially contaminated property. But again, it's another added layer of protection. So the time frame for all of that, the phase 1 would take a couple months potentially. I said here up to 90 days. The umbrella application is pretty quick, and the municipal liability exemption would probably take a couple months as well to get all of those approvals. But basically these programs and this process allows the town to take ownership, not have to do any of the environmental work here. And then when the cleanup is done, or all of our requirements have been completed in terms of addressing the contamination, the town could either keep the property for themselves or transfer it to a developer at that time. And at that point, we would know that the contaminant issues have been addressed and what what any of the longer term obligations are in terms of monitoring or site restrictions on the property.
I got a question on the money aspect of this.
Mhm.
Is the federal money guaranteed? Because
Um,
we'll be taking possession of it if the money, for some reason, who knows, dries up. Is the town then responsible for the cleanup?
So if there isn't federal funding available at a particular time, I would say we would be in a position to um, wait for funding to be available, and we would not be asking the town to do any of that work. At this point, we expect that APU and Unicorn are going to be continuing the work on this site and moving through the corrective action planning and implementation process. So we expect them to be doing the work here. But this is kind of a fail-safe if something were to change. All of these programs allow the town to access funding should it be needed.
Shouldn't be needed?
Should it be needed?
Oh, should it be needed? I'm not hearing, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Kim, if the town were to take ownership of the property, APU and Unicorn would still continue their work on the cleanup, or their management, did I hear that right, or did I misunderstand that?
Right, that's what we expect. So the responsible party would continue to do the work regardless of the property transferring or not.
Okay. I thought that's what I heard, but I just wanted to make sure.
I thought that too.
But pretty much you can't do anything with the property while this is going on.
No,
Right, which is why the owner is
Right,
frustrated with it.
and I understand that.
But I think at this point, Kim, would the current owner, everybody's kind of at a standstill, is that correct?
No, the work is moving forward. We have been working with the owner right now to modify some existing monitoring wells to either make them flush mounted with the ground, and removing some monitoring wells to allow him to utilize the property a bit while the work is still going on. So until this point, all of the monitoring wells had been sticking out of the ground. And he asked us to modify those, and we've been working with Unicorn to we've approved a plan to do that, and we expect them to do that in the coming month. But in terms of building something here, or utilizing the property differently than it is now, we wouldn't want someone to build something and have it inhibit the ability to do any cleanup work. So right now things are kind of sitting as is with the old building foundation, but we are allowing the owner to, I think he expressed interest in just using the property for storage or parking while we are still working, and so we're working with him to allow that.
But I think I heard earlier in your conversation that if something were to be built there, whatever it is, the cleanup and the construction could kind of go hand in hand. If the program were, or if a study or whatever needed to be done and a plan were implemented for that. Did you hear that right?
I think it's always helpful when we're thinking about a potential cleanup strategy to know what the site might be used for in the long run, if it's going to be green space or if there's going to be a building there, or what the potential options are. That's always helpful to know in terms of a cleanup. Because there are different options of cleanup, whether you're going to be very aggressive with trying to remove everything, and that may be very difficult and costly, or taking an approach where you're managing the risk and monitoring the contamination if it's not really affecting anybody.
Okay. That makes sense. Anybody have anything else for Kim on this one? Steven.
No, I know, originally I thought that if the municipality took it over and we were incorporated with a cleanup, I didn't think we could take and put it out to a developer, but maybe something's changed. So, but I know we had some other ones.
Well, I think, yeah, there's, right, I think there's a lot of options, okay?
Yes.
And I don't want to get into a huge discussion on it tonight. I think that's a whole separate
That's a separate issue.
once. And I know Kim will send us her, you said you had a new report, so I'm assuming that once you are able to, absorb that report and figure out what's going on, you certainly may have some new information. And we could get an update, even if it's just through an email or something back, certainly might help us make a decision. But I think it's something we need to talk about because I think we're at that point.
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
I was just gonna say I can share the report once that's finalized and keep you updated on what those next steps are.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's on our side. One, I don't know if and I don't know if it would be feasible to do it now or you're gonna do that later. To delineate that wetland that's in there, because I believe that, I would like to know exactly how much of that parcel is a class 2 wetland. Okay,
Mhm.
that's just that.
If you want, if it's in your, are you okay?
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be within the scope of what we require
Well,
APU or
correct.
unicorn management to do, because it doesn't
Okay, all right. My
not
question
part of
was,
the investigation to deal with the contamination, but if there's, a developer or someone interested in finding that out in terms of what the options are for reuse of the site, that would be kind of a separate effort aside from the contaminant issues.
okay.
Yeah, I think there's already a map of the wetlands. It's already there.
No, but if you read that they have to come out and actually
Right.
mark it.
Right, exactly. But there's already a map on file. And, when you're in there, obviously, if you're doing a cleanup, I'm gonna guess that you can,
Correct.
there's a lot of things that are gonna supersede a wetland when you're doing a cleanup such as that.
Well, that was part of my concern.
Right.
Is because,
Right.
A&R gets really freaky about anybody doing anything in a wetland. So how is that going to affect
And I,
up of the parcel?
I gotta bet A&R is gonna be involved because of the wetlands and when the state DEC is involved and A&R and they're working together, it's,
Right.
yeah. They're all working together here to clean this up, so. It's just a division, so.
Yeah, I think, to my knowledge, the wetlands are primarily on the south and east of the property. I don't know if any of the cleanup options would potentially impact the wetlands. That would be probably something the consultant would look at during their evaluation of options, and if they would need to, work around those wetlands or select a cleanup that doesn't impact those at all.
Anybody have any more questions for Kim?
Not at this time.
I think just getting us that updated summary would be, very helpful and, we can move forward or whatever we're gonna do with that, And I think this is certainly something that we need to actually sit down and discuss, as a board.
Yeah.
That's where we're at with it, so. Thank you for the presentation, Kim. Thanks for your time.
Sure, sure. Feel free to reach out with additional questions and I can send you more information as well, and we'll be in touch.
For
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Have a good night.
Do you want me to bring that back to a regular meeting for discussion?
Let's bring it back after she gives us that summary, at a regular meeting. And probably the following meeting, or as quick as we can from the time she gives us the next summary of her report.
Yeah.
And we may even want to just, we may want to schedule a meeting specifically for that discussion
Okay.
that night, because, I'm feeling, I don't know what you guys are feeling, but I'm feeling that we probably should have some, at least allow for some extensive public comment.
Yeah.
On that situation.
Yeah.
So we may just want to do a special meeting just for that.
I'd like to know some of the options of the cleanup and how long it would take.
Well, I don't think they have any idea.
I don't think they have a clue.
They discussed some of the options for cleanup that Unicorn is going to present to the DEC, but
Right.
DEC will decide which is best suited.
Right, but they must have a rough idea of the length of.
I don't think you're gonna have an idea of the length, not a clue.
Okay.
That's just my gut, but
All right.
I mean, let's wait for that summary. Let's bring it back as a specific meeting. Special meeting just specifically for that and allow for, I won't call it a public hearing, but we'll allow.
Informational hearing?
We'll allow for some extensive public comment that night. Give the town a chance to talk about it and at least throw in their 2 cents. Right? Okay, which brings us to, Bob Fisher. Discussion regarding the church carriage barn in the old town hall.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Bob.
Hey,
Bob,
So with regard to the church and the old town hall, Hannah and Mr. Strohmeyer and I spent some time going through old records, deeds. Mr. Strohmeyer was very helpful in getting us copies of old historical documents, etc. And from my standpoint, the long and short of it is that it appears to me that the town owns the land, and the town certainly has an interest, no doubt whatsoever, in the basement area of the meeting house or the church. And I guess what I need to know from the board is, what is your overall goal here? And what do we need to prove for various grants to help with the property? And then I can probably go more into detail on different aspects of that. But I think I need a little bit of what your goals are.
my goal is personally to see the building fixed and kept up and not disintegrate and fall into the ground. And I would also like to know if we could move forward with having a budget line of people donating money and actually keeping track of that to help with the fix up of the building.
Okay, certainly from the from the upkeep, there needs I'm going to split that into three different segments. One, from a select board standpoint and budgeting, you can budget certain things for the repair of that building because the town has an interest in the building. Number two, nothing would prevent an organization to be formed, let's say Friends of the Meeting House. It can be created as a 501c3 for the purpose of people donating, making charitable donations that would help with the upkeep of it. And then I think, as was done many, many years ago, the church actually did reach out for members to put up money for repairs as well. So along that last line of thinking, I think that the select board and the officials or the board of the church really should meet to see what can be hammered out with regard to an agreement. From my perspective, the best option would be for the church to absolutely quit claim any and all legal interests in and to the building and the property. And so the town, so that the town is the full owner, and then have the town do a lease back to the church of the church area for some very, very long period of time. But through that lease agreement, the town we would have an agreement as to what the maintenance would be. But given that the town would be the overall owner, it would be easier for the town to keep the property maintained if that's the major goal.
I'm on the same page with you.
So my goal, Bob, when I got on the board initially, it was kind of a pet peeve of mine, so to speak. The church is an absolute iconic building in the town. There's hands down, first off, just the building itself. Secondly, it overlooks the entire valley. So, I think through no fault of anybody's, mostly because it's a pretty good sized building that requires a lot of upkeep and maintenance that's been, I think, a little difficult to keep up with over the years. So we talked to, when Rebecca was in here, Angie and I met with some of the church members, and we tried to get a grant to see what we could do. I think you were in that meeting, was right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a while. Yeah, it's been a while. So, and if I'm not mistaken, the biggest problem with that grant was we couldn't define ownership. Is that, you remember
I
that?
think Rebecca clarified that. It was basically, we just were at the bottom of the list, and I said, try that next year.
So, but I think in a conversation, and if I remember right, and I may be wrong, in a conversation, I think that was part of one of the problems is we couldn't define ownership in the building. So that people didn't know who they were giving the grant to, basically.
Just a point of correction, the actual church did get grants filing jointly with the town in the past successfully.
Yeah, I'm going on,
Lily grant was.
yeah, I'm basing it on what we did in 2020, because that's what I was involved.
We also were told at that time to file again next year, because the monies for the historical grants are given for project specific monies, and the grant proposal that we wrote at the time was a little bit too big. They like something narrowed down, like if you're gonna work on the windows, they want a smaller, like a targeted grant like that. And at the time we were asking for, a major steeple fund grant, which is, you're talking like the difference between, say, 40,000 or 100,000. That was the problem that I remember also, just to add more to your question here.
So, go ahead, Tara.
From my standpoint, it wasn't necessarily the grant, the confusion of ownership. That's what if, so we own the downstairs or we have rights to the downstairs. What if we want to make a change downstairs that the church doesn't necessarily agree with, or vice versa? What if they want to make a change that affects the downstairs? There's a lot of overlap of things with the church because it's so confusing. And when I first started, it has been confusing since I started. And I'm afraid that if we just leave it as it is, 20 years from now, we're gonna be in the same position of what is the ownership and researching it all over again. So that's sort of where.
And that's true. So I think, Bob, from my own personal view, it's, like I said, the church, it's definitely has the potential to be a drawing card to different things in the town. It really and truly is an iconic building that, like I said, overlooks the whole entire valley. And if Pownal doesn't have anything else, we have the valley. So, there's just that, all else fails, we always have that, That's where I'm coming from on it, is to finally put to bed once and for all who owns it and what to do with it so that everybody can move on. It's been this way for,
Ever.
yeah,
So,
forever.
and if Mr. Strohmeyer, feel free to correct me, but I was reviewing today a lot of the material that we collected. But if you go back in time, in 1917, when the town clerk's office was built, the motion on that stated that or the article was whether or not to put the, create the funds to build the new town clerk's office on land already owned by the town. So
That is
land
correct.
perspective, that was
And
very helpful on that. And then if you go back from there to when the building was actually constructed, I believe in the late 1840s.
that was reconstructed.
Reconstructed.
The original building was built in 1789.
Correct. But then it was reconstructed in the late 1840s, and the records around that time were quite good because not only was the church going out for money from its parishioners, but the town was doing subscriptions, etc., and taxing for the improvements to the church. So as it got built, the town was definitely using its power of taxation to build it. So all of that, and it's kind of tough just to build the downstairs and not the upstairs. I mean, it's all one big building that in the mid 1840s, everyone was in agreement it needs to be built. It just wasn't really set down as to who owned the entire building. It was pretty clear that the downstairs was for the town and the meeting house and to have town meetings there, and the upstairs was for church purposes. But it could have been much clearer as to the actual ownership of the building. And to me, that's what we need to hash out in an agreement with the church. And I haven't had any conversations with the church officials, but happy to enter into those if the board wishes us to.
Well, I think that's our next step, is to sit down with the officials of the church, because we haven't done that yet, really. No one has.
We haven't had any meetings with our elected officials.
So I do think that's the absolute next step, so that we can all sit down together and figure out the next course of action, because I don't think it's anybody's goal to get rid of the church. I think it's the exact opposite. Is to keep the
Save it,
church there
preserve
for
Preserve it.
my grandkids and their grandkids and whoever else that goes into comes into town. And that's the absolute goal, the end goal for us, for the board. And I know it's the goal for the church members too. There's no doubt that everyone has the same goal. We just need to come there.
Does the church have a fairly healthy population or of parishioners?
Congregation.
Members?
Sure.
I don't think any church in Pownell's got a huge congregation, and we're not like Joel Osteen, but I would say we've got a pretty solid group that definitely is reliable. And
I think they're very consistent. When I drive by on Sundays, it seems like it's the same cars for sure. They're very consistent.
There's a lot of members who are members or affiliated members, and sometimes affiliated members still support the church. They
Right.
don't, they live far away, they don't go there every week, or they go on Easter and Christmas, you know? So there's things like that, so.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid, Bob.
Membership, I would say, but
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid membership. I think she's absolutely right that, you know, a lot of their parishioners were Pownal residents that are no longer Pownal residents that are still affiliated with the church because that's where they went to church and
weddings and whatnot, and group, I mean.
That's right.
And over the years, of course.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's quite similar to many other towns that have that classic Vermont meeting house or Vermont church type building that historically has been shared between the town and the church. And it's to me quite ironic as an attorney because our nation is based on the division between church and state. And yet when you go back into the histories in the late 1700s, early 1800s, if you looked at your select boards, they were almost identical to your boards of the various churches. And so these meeting houses were a great example of that. Let's build one great big place and let's have the downstairs be used for town offices and town events and the upstairs for worship. And it worked beautifully, except for, you know, here we are a couple hundred years later and want to make sure we can do the upkeep, but you don't have, it's not like you have an absolute fresh deed on this that says the town owns it such that, you know, for these grants. I think some of these programs that have the grants do want to see actual ownership. So it would at the very least be good for the town and the church to come to agreements on that.
Okay.
So happy to work on that. And I don't think for tonight's meeting, we need to go into the details of the articles and the proof and the motions and the historical documents that we collected. But when we meet with the church, we should really share between both organizations all of that information. And my thanks go out to Mr. Strohmeyer. He was a fantastic help on material I never would have found.
I think Tara has a couple of questions.
Two things. You haven't mentioned the carriage barn at all.
So the carriage barn, there was a deed from a Mr. Niles, I think, to the trustees of the church back in, I'd have to switch to a different screen here to remember the date on that. So that might be clearer with regard to ownership of that, because it mentioned in that deed for the purpose of horses being tied up and teams being able to be out of the weather, things like that. So that's the one where I think there is a deed reference that would help us on that.
Okay. And then the other question is specifically about the use of the Old Town Hall. I think the board was questioning whether that could be sold separately if they were to decide to do that in the future. Just your opinion on that part of it.
On the what of the Old Town Hall?
Like the future use, like if they decided they wanted to sell that building, would that be possible? And what would, you know? That would
Oh, sure. That I think that's fairly well established with the Old Town Hall, given the records that we found, at least like in 1917, being one where it was pretty clear as to not only the land ownership of that, but also of the public funds that were used to construct that. So I think that is fairly clear, and depending on what the board or the voters want to do, could make decisions on the future use of that.
And I don't actually know because I haven't looked. Is it on a separate parcel or is it on the same parcel?
On the old maps, the short answer is I'm not certain on that. The old maps that show Pownal Center there show the buildings, but it's not really clear as to the delineation of the actual lot. I'd have to go back and look at that. Does Mr. Strohmeyer have an opinion on that?
I'll look right now, but
They give the dimensions of the parcel on the deed. Right? I guess the building is like 60 by 20 or 25. And I guess the parcel that's for the, that separate parcel was 30 by 20.
Okay, all right.
So that's another issue because the parcel, if you went by the deed, the building's built on two different parcels.
Okay. I'll have to look at that.
Townview has it as one giant parcel. It includes.
They included it because nobody ever thought of it.
Right.
Or whatever it was. That's something that's gotta get looked into. Exactly what they meant when they turned around and did it that way.
Right.
Because that's what's confusing when they talked about on land already owned by the town. Were they trying to just carve out a smaller portion for that building? I don't know why they would do it if it was all still town ownership. Why wouldn't stay just one larger parcel?
If you built a building on somebody else's property and they were in the process of selling it, you may end up turning around and giving them the deed for that, whatever they built their building on, to clean up your deed. Because Niles was a very good member of the church at that time. So that was my thoughts on the situation. He never had a problem with them building the carriage barn on his property, that part of it. But then later on, when they went to sell his house, they had to clean that up because now you got the church carriage, part of the church carriage barn on somebody else's property. So, I mean, how would you handle that?
Yeah, well, you would certainly have to do quitclaim deeds or something to clean that up. But
Correct.
if you're talking about the Niles deed to the church with regard to the carriage barn, you're correct. That does have a description of the of that parcel, but I don't know if that is answering the question with regard to like on the other side of the church.
So Mike, may I? I believe that is grant land. That was land that was gifted, or however, you can say it was stolen from somebody or gifted by the governor of New Hampshire, or he stole stolen property, however you want to put it.
The so-called glebe lands, yes.
No, it wasn't glebe land.
No?
Glebe land was church land, am I correct?
Well, when the governor made the grant of the towns, they set aside certain properties for the church, the town, and the school. And
this was
collectively, they were called glebe lands. Now, glebe does refer to the church part of it, but
also,
as part of the grant, there were the sites for schools, for the town. Many times they were clustered close together for a town center.
Correct, because I know that that is the center, and that's where the town would have. Actually, I forgot which one. I think Paulina sent that book, and in that book it described it as grant. It was grant land that was granted to the town of Pownal to build in the center of Pownal, to build its town hall or whatever.
I think we're saying the same thing on that, but the difficulty is, like when you look at the lister's card on it, it just shows it as one bigger property. So, and I don't know if the neighboring properties have ever been surveyed by a surveyor. Sometimes you can take actual surveys from adjacent properties and then figure out what you're left with. So that's another
Correct.
way to look at it.
If you look up the deed for the town property, it's the Barlow property that they used to base the deed on, not the property up there.
So I think if I'm not mistaken, I think we're at a point now where the board we need to figure out exactly what direction that we want to give Bob Fisher. Okay? And at that point, I think that we need to, which I think we already have somewhat of a direction. We need to know who owns what, right? So we're all in agreement with, we want to know, and we need to sit down with the church now. Do a couple of questions for you guys. Do Thursday nights work for your membership or whoever, your board of directors? I don't know what you call your board or whatever, but.
It's called Church Council Governing.
Okay, there you go. Would Thursday nights work for a meeting for your church council? Or would another night be better?
Need some advance notice because everybody.
Right, obviously.
And today we just didn't
Mhm.
have notes.
And that's fine, right, right.
Yeah, Thursdays are good.
Thursdays work. Okay, so if we were to schedule a meeting 2 or 3 weeks in advance, would that be enough? A month? You tell me what you would be most comfortable with.
I think a few weeks would be good, you know, Yeah.
Reach out to everybody and. see
and
what's good.
we would definitely reach out to as many people as we could that
Well, for
have
sure.
historical stuff, because I can't remember everything, you know, I know that there's other people who remember stuff better than me.
Right.
So,
Um,
and we've got so much, we would have to kind of gather our paperwork together because we're talking a lot of decades of paperwork.
Yeah, so I think where we're at is we're gonna ask Bob to get a definition of ownership as far as the town hall, the carriage barn and the church from his standpoint. And then we'll come back and we'll meet together and try to figure out what the best course of action is for the church council and membership and for the town. Does that sound reasonable?
When I schedule with Bob, do you want me to schedule the whole board? Or do you want to assign a couple of board members?
But it's a Thursday night though.
If Thursday night, we might as well do that the right Thursday.
But
Right, but she's talking about,
I'm just trying to be conscious of the fact we have lots of Thursdays scheduled out.
Right, we do a lot of,
No,
I can,
But we can always work with like a Tuesday or something else, maybe if that is possible. Okay, okay, and whole board.
If I could just jump in, I think for whatever meeting where you want me to come, I should come in person. Because in looking at the deeds and the old records, I'm not that literate on, I mean, I can share my screen and all that stuff. It's just gonna be so much more productive to sit around a table and look at things. So
I agree.
and the only, just to let you know, Tara, the May 16th, I think it is a Thursday. I don't know, my 16th, 17th, whatever that Thursday is, I am not available that night, but other Thursdays I'm good.
To give them plenty of time, maybe we'll shoot for June, month of June, if that sounds.
I'm sure I'm reasonable.
there,
Yeah.
Operation.
And
Just, you know, that's July.
July
I don't
9th.
know that I use.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
and
if
the
we
other
were
thing
to
too is,
schedule-
oh, sorry.
No, that's all right, Bob, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say
we're
too,
talking about-
if you want to have a, sorry to interrupt, I'm talking over you, sorry. If you do want to meet earlier than with the full board, we could always have one or two of you so that it's not a quorum and meet with members of the church council preliminarily, if that helps move things along. So I just throw that out as an alternative.
Okay. I think looking at the June calendar, we would have a regular meeting on the 13th and the 27th. Those are the two Thursdays in June. If we were to schedule June 20th, is that enough time for you to get your,
Yeah, that would be fine.
that would be
You have your
okay?
calendar in front of you, Bob?
I'm getting hip surgery on July 9th, so I'd like to get it rolling before then. You know, I'd like to try to schedule June 20th specifically for this with the board, and then if we need, what's that?
Make sure he's available.
Yeah, if Bob's available that night. That's what we're,
To the best of my knowledge, I'm available that night.
Okay.
so we'll tentatively schedule June 20th at 6. Okay? And then
Let everybody
Um,
know.
if we decided to maybe have two board members with Bob on another night, where we came up with something we'd like to discuss before that, even if you had a few members, you know, we give you, obviously, we wouldn't call you tonight and say, hey, tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, we're gonna have a meeting with the lawyer and,
Around the corner, so yeah.
Yeah. okay, all right.
This is important, so we'll definitely discuss it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say, like I said, I don't want to call you on Thursday night and say, hey, Friday night, we're gonna meet at 5 o'clock. Right, you know, but, you know, we try to give as much notice as we could, but if something were right there that we kind of needed to, you know, try to figure out. Perfect. I think we got a direction now, Bob, but that's, are you comfortable with that?
That's absolutely great. And it can all be worked out. We just need, we need to get to a point where there's the clarity so that when we're all gone 100 years from now, everybody knows, you know, how the property is owned and what the maintenance requirements are. So
Wouldn't it have been nice if somebody did that prior? We wouldn't be here. We would all know. Good.
Super.
Do we have any more questions? Board have any more questions for Bob? I think we're
Nope.
good. Excellent.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's your meeting room there is really great. Such a big improvement over the old one. So
Oh, for sure.
have a great evening.
You too, Bob. Thank you. I think we're on the right track. I think we're on the right track totally here, so.
Before I die, I would love to see the steeple back on that church.
So the,
So that's, I don't want you to think that we're trying to do anything negative. We are not.
We all agree, the building definitely needs a lot of maintenance, and it just start finding things and figuring out who can help cover what. I mean, we have funds to cover things, but of course.
we don't have a major, we really, we have.
That's a pretty major building too, right?
But we do actually, just FYI, if anyone's watching and wants a good contractor, we do have funds we've raised for 6 years or more to do the facade anyway,
Yeah, the roof.
which needs primer and start the roof, and the
Yeah.
roof,
That would be
So-
priority. It'd be nice to get that done in summer, because I know, I think there was a leak we have fixed, but just, it's nice sort of looking at it from here. You can see the patches.
Coming up the mountain every day.
I really believe that
Every
that
day.
church is, it's a draw, if nothing else. It's something that the residents of the town of Pownal, as they should all their churches anyway, but this one being right in the center of town and overlooking the valley is just, it is it.
Yeah, and
In my mind.
This new building with the park with this, I agree. We're
Yeah.
definitely on the same page.
We're on, you know, we're all,
my church for 60 years.
I went to Sunday school in the basement of
both
that
did, you know
church, okay? So
My kids were baptized there. I was.
I've got a little vested interest, I guess, too, so,
Sunday school in the downstairs.
Yeah,
yeah.
There was a lot of community
And then,
events.
yeah, in the basement of the church, you know, went to Sunday school.
so please don't think of it as negative. Please think of it as a positive.
No, we are.
We know.
I could see the fear on your face.
Well, Tara has everybody's contact information that she needs to get in contact with everyone, so Good, we're on the same page. This'll happen. This'll happen. We'll make this work and be an ample, thing for everybody at the end. And that's everybody's.
Did you reach back out to Josh Miller for the painting?
I don't know. I've never received any.
Oh, well, we did at one time. We had a couple of years ago when we were trying to get,
We would really like, I would personally love to see a painter so we could do this scraping and priming at least, because that is so important for Bearwood. And we know that there is pieces of wood that need reconstruction and stuff, all that, but you know, I mean, I painted drawings, so that was the start.
And
It's a lot more needed.
rules you're supposed to abide by. That was one of our concerns too. Instead of us just running out there as a group, I mean, you've got lead paint possibly.
yes.
I know it's been repainted many times throughout the decades, but we didn't want to start a project and maybe violate some sort of lead paint law because.
Oh, yeah.
So we really wanted to have an expert come in and tell us, and we did reach out to one guy and he said it really seems confusing. I mean, he talked about tenting off the whole side of the building, but some of it's vinyl siding and then it's a project that's really best left to an expert.
Yep.
I'm gonna text Josh Miller right now, just because
No.
Josh is, he's.
We did it
the only painter-
back when Rebecca was here, and that's when we were trying to get the grant and it didn't come through. So maybe he could come and give you another estimate.
You know, one of the grant issues they said was they didn't like the vinyl siding because of.
It's historic.
I see something.
Yeah, historic preservation, they load. Yeah, because I've had issues in Bennington with a house that had that.
And thankfully, it's only on, if you look at the building, it's actually only on two sides, so it's not as big of a project to remove it. And
Right.
you assume the wood underneath looks somewhat decent or it's fixable, so. That was definitely one of the issues that Rebecca had been told
Right.
by the grant committee, like, hey, it's tough to get a grant for a historical building that's got modern plastic siding on it. Or whatever you call it, vinyl.
I just sent Josh a message to see me about, I see him periodically about the painting the church. Okay.
Great.
And we had a guy that possibly could do the roof. We got a quote a couple of years back, and I'm sure the price has gone up considerably since, but I think it was a 2020 meeting. We had talked about the whole thing done.
I know, a roofer that lives in Halifax.
Good.
Kind of owes me a couple favors and he's a pretty good roofer and he's,
Yeah,
I may call him one of the favors to see what we can do with him, so.
the roofer said it wasn't a complicated project. I
Yeah.
mean, look, the roofers know.
But once you pull, the trick is with a roof, it's not the roof. It's when you take the roofing off and discover what's underneath that becomes.
I'll reach out to Ricky tomorrow.
Repairing the roof doesn't preclude any problem with this future steep, because
Just protecting.
that, it just has to protect it now, but you build.
I have everything on the steeple.
Yeah.
Everything.
We have all the blueprint.
Yeah.
Draft blueprints and everything.
But the engineer, engineer company.
Yeah.
Architects, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have plans for these people too. I mean,
Good.
But yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
I mean,
coming in on short notice.
Short notice.
Yeah, I apologize for the last minute on this. Thank you for
We're
coming.
local, we just came down and I think there's a couple of us in by Zoom call, so. They're listening to us.
Great. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be in
take this-
touch.
We'll take this and move it forward. Okay, thank you. Okay, animal control. Let's go over the job description. Everybody has that.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions? Everybody have a chance to read it?
Yep.
We had actually developed that some time ago, back in
Wow.
December, but we never brought it back for
Right.
final approval.
Right.
I'm not sure if Carl and.
Carl and Bill.
No, we weren't on at that time.
You want to read mine?
Yeah, I'll read it because it's gonna be easier for me than to pull it up with
We
mine.
did get it in the evening here.
The only thing, and I don't know if it's how you put it in or if you bother putting it in, is my big concern was that he doesn't do anything more than what he's trained to do.
He or she.
Excuse me, he or she, my apologies. That they don't turn around and do anything more, because I don't want to have somebody, because there is a delineation between animal control and humane officers.
Correct. This is not a humane officer.
This is not a humane officer.
No.
Right. So maybe
That'd be nice,
it's
thank you.
some statement on there, like a
It's-
disclaimer that says. it's
Disclaimer, this-
Animal control office, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not
actually, probably should have asked
like the humane.
Bob, who was here,
Why
but
don't you maybe run that by Bob? But you know what? We can probably have that in. It's not a big
It's not
deal.
a big deal, it's a job.
Because we just need to have this job description so that we can post this job.
yeah.
I didn't even put anything on here that was,
No, I thought
But
it
we
was
already-
perfectly
No, I
fine.
think it's,
Except for I was
we'd
thinking,
already hashed this out once.
what's that?
Anything that needs to be added other than the humane.
yeah, I would say that this is not a humane officer position.
No,
That requires
Without training.
training.
Okay,
I mean, if they already are one, that'd be great, but
oh,
well, depending on what you
I don't
want
know.
to,
Yeah.
what the board wants to do with the
Right.
animal control.
Right.
services
exactly.
And what they want to give them for duties.
yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to get into the humane.
I don't think we want to get into
I don't
that.
think so
We wanna
either.
keep it
I
simple
misspoke.
on what we're
I'm
doing right
sorry.
now.
Agree with you 100%.
No, that's true.
Just,
So do we have any more discussion on the job description for animal control officer?
well,
That's good.
make a motion to accept it
Approve it as read, or is it presented?
as written
Are
and
we? You gonna add the other stuff before we approve it, or are we just gonna? Just gonna write it
I
down?
think we just leave it like this, simple and.
Yeah.
But then I would be happy if, when we finally get an applicant, that they are going to sign, that they will sign something that they will only do what they're trained to do.
right.
Right.
But then the
It's
job,
gonna cover our butts too.
then the job specification.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
I can do that when they sign her.
I just don't want to run into a
Yep,
situation.
no, but that, well, I guess we gotta be clear as far as David and the job specification.
And we also have to be clear, when we talk to this person, that we don't put him in a position because we tell him to do something that he is not trained to do.
He or she.
He or she, I'm sorry, I've been on the farm too long.
Yes,
The
you have.
individual.
Let's go. Get with the times, Carl. I have a motion to approve the animal control officer job description as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Now we need to post that.
The posting is very simple. It just says to reference the job description. I didn't know if you want more detail.
I think that's fine.
Posting,
I think that's totally fine.
the less working, the
Yeah.
less we pay for the janitors.
Because this will be posted on our website, so if they wanna refer to it,
When are you going to,
Probably sooner the better.
I'm thinking tomorrow we post. And then how long do you want to leave it open for applications?
2 days? I'm hoping somebody comes in 2 days.
You are such an optimist.
Well, I was hoping,
So
right?
our current animal control officer is done May 11th. Just,
okay,
Which brings me to the question. And I was gonna look this up and I didn't. What, if we don't have an animal control officer, it reverts to the state troopers, right? Please tell me this.
Can we find
It
out?
might be you.
Can we find out?
I will find out. I will find out.
Gotta be in the big book of,
Because
which I have, would you like to borrow?
No, you can have it. I'm gonna delegate that down the line.
Okay,
It's
I'll look
always
into
that
that part.
chair, right? I can delegate that down.
I'll post tomorrow and then we should probably let it run for 2 weeks.
I was gonna say at least 2 weeks, yes.
Okay,
It would be nice to be able to close it on the 9th.
okay.
Maybe posting online, you know, that we might be in a transition and like kind of letting people know who to contact if Leonard's not around.
Yeah, I'll find out exactly,
Please.
because I'm not sure if you guys are statutorily required to provide animal control.
I don't think, because there's not a statute.
Think so?
I'm-
Oh, you fill in, it's statutory, you fill in for the health officer. I don't.
I'm
What that.
I guess that's,
Well, some
I guess
towns
that's.
don't have a ACO. I
But
mean,
that's,
Bennington doesn't have an ACO.
no, they don't.
Shasbury doesn't have an ACO.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure it goes to
It goes to law enforcement,
law enforcement.
so.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not giving.
Because I think Bennington's actually turning around and looking at doing
I don't have a town.
an animal control.
I don't know if I use the zone.
Because they're gonna build a kennel, on Louisville Road.
Okay,
Okay.
planning commission, we're done with animal control, right?
Sure.
Glasses. Let's hope. Planning commission resignation and new member appointment. We announced that Fred has resigned from the planning commission. And we only had one interested person in the
I did reach back out to him today.
Okay.
Bob Jarvis, I did reach out to say, hey, are you definitely still interested?
Right.
I'm assuming he is, but I haven't heard back, so I figured if you want to appoint him and he decides, no, I don't want it, then you can always just
right.
back out for.
Right.
So with Bob Jarvis being the one who did it, express interest in the planning commission, I would entertain a motion to reach out to Bob and offer him that position. And if he doesn't want the position, then we have to post it and move on with that.
Right, make a motion to,
Contact Bob to see if he's still interested. Is that what you're asking, Mike?
send Bob a email to verify his intents. If so, then his appointment will start with his acceptance.
And he would fill Fred's term. I don't know when Fred's term would expire.
Next year.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. So he would fill that term.
Right.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, draft invite to bid for contract law enforcement services, discussion and approval.
Yeah.
Everybody read that draft?
What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I only have one question.
Okay.
Under the bid format, where number 4, it says, please provide detailed response to the following.
Okay.
Hyphenated, or how are you gonna say, the number 2, provide areas of coverage within the town. Shouldn't we be stating all our town? Or are we allowing whoever's bidding to pick and choose where they're gonna take and provide coverage? That's the only thing that
I think
I,
I just said, how would I put it? The town of Pownal?
It says provide areas of coverage within the town.
yeah. So
I think
the wordplay thing, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I did that because what if there's an area they refuse to go to? What if they will not cover, I don't know, county road, just as an example?
Right, no,
They will not go on certain roads or areas. I think that's why I included that, but.
okay, but I'm thinking. That's my only thing.
And I think that I think they should state that.
Right, that's why.
Because I think that would be part of my consideration on whether to accept a bid from that person or not.
Right, if there's gonna be an area they refuse to go to, you should know that before.
Should we know that? Because that might be an area where you want them to go and they decide they don't want to go there. Well,
Right.
That's a good point. That's the only question I had other than that.
and this is just you explained it to me before. It's not a
Contract,
contract. It's just a proposal for a bid.
it's a request for proposals or an invite to bid, which are the same thing, we're inviting
Okay, all right.
agencies to offer their
All
proposals.
right, okay. I got it now.
No. Other than that, that's,
And we might only get one, we might not get any, it really depends on,
right.
if there's any available.
Then we may get ones that we don't want. So, I mean, there's that too.
Let's see, do we have?
Anything that anybody else saw that needed to change, questions,
I
additions?
don't think,
I think we need, the only thing I saw, Tara, and I just looked at it again, was I don't see where in here where we have, where we can reject any and all bids.
So just add the disclaimer.
Yes, it can go right there, it can go,
Or on the fifth bulletin.
Select Board of the Town reserves the
Yeah.
right.
reserves the right to accept or reject.
oh, okay, I was looking down at the bottom, okay, yeah, so it's in there, that's fine.
Move it to the end though, if you want it like asterisk.
I just thought it would be down there, that's why I kept looking down there, sorry.
I think I will move it to the end with like a little asterisk next to it.
So the other thing I had where it says select board reserves the right to terminate contract due to unsatisfactory performance. I think in order to not run into a legal battle, maybe we should have after review. After a review with the,
Is that a question?
Or we could just turn around and put in, we have the right within, you know, to terminate the contract at any time, but we have to give a 30-day notice.
or something like that would be fine.
And that way, everybody saves face. If, for some stupid reason, they turn around and don't like working with us, they can give us a 30-day notice.
Any tiny things that I noticed that, you know, just popped out at me.
The only other one is there a statute that states, that law enforcement has to uphold a certain certification?
I think.
That way they
on
can-
Their end, I think they would have to,
They have,
I didn't know if we need to have,
I don't think we have to have that because they,
if it should be,
Yeah.
that they have to keep that.
They have to do
that
it.
statute, I guess. That's the only other question.
Right.
I think they sort of handle all that. If we were managing a law enforcement, like say our constable, then we would be responsible for that, but that whatever agency is applying or submitting a bid will be responsible for that.
I was,
Now, the other question I had, sorry for the
Oh,
questions.
you're fine.
The other question I had is, should we have our budget number? Okay,
No, because I mean,
it's public knowledge,
you
so.
can go and look for the budgeted amount, what we budgeted for next year. But if we announce it, it might limit the competition. It doesn't make it as competitive.
correct.
Yes, they can go and look for it, but
okay,
we don't need to announce it because that might minimize our
and that's fine, just, that's why I asked the questions and that's why we get the answers. Right?
Now, they'll submit to us.
Mhm.
Now, do we turn around and submit back to them a contract to sign?
Whichever party you choose to go with.
Correct, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, I'm trying to get the process
Then
in
you
my
take
brain.
the proposal they give you,
Right.
you draw out a contract that you and them.
They both
agree on.
agree on and
Both
sign.
sign.
So that's where the contract comes in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Generally, once they do a bid, whoever wins the bid, then they will submit a contract, then we will review the contract,
Correct,
whether, and if we want to tweak it or accept it, and
correct.
so that's all.
I just don't want any more hidden charges. And, you have it where, you know, for paperwork, investigation, travel and all other stuff.
right.
Yeah, well,
If we're gonna be if the town's gonna be charged hourly rates for things above and beyond patrol, we would wanna know that before.
Exactly.
I'd like to have it.
we want to know exactly because it's, you know,
I don't think there's I'm gonna go on a limb here and I'm gonna say that there's no intention for a hidden charge. It's things that just aren't specified in the contract and.
Right.
Right.
Maybe that was an appropriate word to use.
that's,
No, I know,
Unexpected
there you go, no, I know.
that's why it's important
Right.
to have a very specific contract.
Right.
All right. You know, to identify exactly what we expect of them, what they expect of us.
Mhm.
And not just say, well, patrol and.
Right. I think so. I'm happy with this invitation
I
to
think we're good
bid.
to put that out.
Yeah.
Just a couple minor changes. Perfect.
Hopefully
The employee self-evaluation review.
And we're really hard on that, getting all those little bubbles next to the numbers. I hope you were really impressed with it because
I looked at this and I'm going, yeah, I think this is exactly what we asked for.
Really hard on the little bubbles.
Yeah, I think I don't know about the rest of you guys here, but I'm pretty
Which email?
impressed with,
Oh, it's in the.
looking at this.
Do you need to?
I think it's exactly what we asked for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Figure out where to find it.
No, did a good job. Very good.
Yeah, it's in the select board. either.
Yeah, I didn't see one single thing in here that
Okay.
there's opportunity for
Where's the last one that she sent, Karen?
plenty of comment and this is exactly what we asked for.
Yep, it's got a range.
Yep.
Right.
And the format is, in my opinion, is easily.
Let's just give you one of these.
We did the send out like you had suggested for evaluation and whatnot. Then you could easily input job descriptions and so you could do.
Yep.
The supervisor could do an evaluation
Yes.
under these topics.
It's exactly what we asked them.
I wasn't here when you guys discussed this last time.
Right.
But this was actually a policy that was put in place like, I don't know, 5 years ago or so.
We were
It was
trying.
Approved by a different board, so now we're just kind of updating it and putting it back into use.
I'm good with this.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's,
Any more discussion on this?
Nope, I'm happy with it.
Motion to approve this employee performance review.
I'll make the motion.
Self-evaluation,
Self-evaluation.
employee performance review.
Second it.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, USPAP appraisal services for the ROW purchase and procurement procedure discussions.
So this is really easy, just a formality. As you all know, we have FORIC funding for the land, our town forest land. And we need to, purchase the right of way, from Donovan, but before we can do that, we have to get a USP, it's a US standard practices appraisal, something like that, USPAP appraisal, in order to meet the grant requirements. Just to make sure I'm crossing all my Ts and dotting all my Is, I just wanted board permission to get quotes or estimates for that and then choose a company based on that rather than going out to bid because that process takes a while. And it might not even be over our procurement amount, but where I have to do that, but I just want to make sure I'm covering all my bases.
So you're asking for permission from the board to move forward.
to bid or
To
estimate.
get estimates instead of going out to bid.
Okay.
So I make a motion to give our town administrator
Our executive
or
assistant.
executive assistant, thank you, to move forward with appraisal process.
Second.
Any more discussion on that? And this is for the purchase of the right of way for our land acquisition. Just so everyone's clear. Any more comment? I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're hoping for closing in May.
Yay.
Yay.
That would be wonderful.
Long time coming.
Yes.
We could wait a few more months and it'll be a whole year.
No,
By July 1.
We're good.
we're good. It's exactly.
Okay, public comment. Do we have a public comment, Hannah? No hands? No public comment? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.